Greetings, comics fans. Lieutenant Fish back with another quick comic video. So, I wanted to do a discussion of Milton Caniff, and in this case, not specifically his longer-running series like Terry and the Pirates, which is a really nice story so far, or Steve Canyon. Now, both these volumes, these are partial collection volumes. Both these were long-running, ongoing series, and I'll definitely pick up the rest of them in the future. They're kind of slow reading, and these are a little pricey, but they are definitely worth it as far as the quality of the printing, IDW or otherwise. But in this case, I want to talk about Mail Call, which was an exclusive strip that Milton Caniff did during World War II. And this is a very interesting title for a lot of reasons. The main thing is, well, first we'll go into the book itself. So I came across this volume when I was in Portland at Powell's Books about 6 or 7 years ago for the Rose Festival. And I picked up a couple copies of this one, found it used. And this is the original kitchen sink printing, I think. Kitchen sink press. But this one, it's a nice paperback version. Nice deal if you can find it. But then I found this one when I was at Sterling Silver Comics in Ventura County last month. Unfortunately, I didn't have space for it packing-wise, so as soon as I got home later in the month, I went ahead and ordered it online from Comics on Amazon. And it came really fast, excellent quality. So this is a reprinted version, a complete version from Hermes Books, Hermes Press. It's about $40 list, but you should be able to get it significantly cheaper than this if you look online in Amazon or somewhere else. Or support your local comic book store if they have this on the shelf. But this is a very interesting book. So, very interesting series. This was an exclusive newspaper strip that came out just from 1942 or so to 1946. And this was Milton Caniff's contribution to the war effort. He's a great cartoonist, but he was rated 4F, so he couldn't be drafted. He was one of those guys who, felt, a bit of a disappointment and a bit of guilt. And there's some good article in here, a good, very nice long intro essay by Dr. Harvey, and it goes into a lot of the background, a lot of the legal issues he was dealing with at the time. So he wanted to contribute. So he wrote to the War Department in advance, right before we were even in the war, about, from his foreseeing some of the issues that, he wanted to contribute some cartoons for the war effort and just be able to work on men's morale. So he had a couple suggestions, but they didn't get back to him until a couple years later. And so originally this comic strip was a spin-off of Terry and the Pirates with a character called Burma, who was already an established character. But that started getting all kinds of legal issues with copyrights because of the syndication. And the essay, the intro, has a lot of good details about it. It's really kind of interesting as far as some of the issues, even though he owned the characters himself, and I don't know how much of it is still similar to what cartoonists these days have to deal with or not. So then he came up with a spin-off character called Miss Lace, who kind of filled in for the Burma character. And so a lot of these strips, they actually have they don't all have Miss Lace in them, but she's a very unique character, and it's definitely like Milton Caniff knew his audience. He knew the terminology to use, and we'll see that. We're not going to go over all of the strips, obviously. There's tons and tons. There's a few hundred in here. But we're going to hit a few highlights and just show how he was able to work the material for the audience. And technically speaking, Mail Call is also a unique newspaper comic strip in that it was officially syndicated by DoD, or by the War Department, for publication over 3,000 newspapers, which is more than any other newspaper comic strip ever, to my knowledge. Granted, most of those were, base newspapers or camp newspapers in the Pacific or Europe or anywhere else, but it's still technically at least U.S. record as far as if you look on Wikipedia, or I'm assuming it's in Guinness as well. But so mail call, obviously that name itself is a double entendre. It's, you know, it's like this is that sort of morale booster that would show up every week in the newspaper. It's a weekly strip. Milt did this the entire war period from 42 to 46 at the same time as he was doing daily strips for Terry and the Pirates. So, and he was doing a lot of other promotional artwork for the War Department and a lot of other, he'd make tour appearances and do other promotional pieces, and it's a lot of work. And he came up with a lot of different techniques as far as designs. That way the strips could get sent out in mimeographed format, or make easier publication in rural, isolated conditions and things. But let's just take a quick look at some of the strips themselves. So basically, this is one of the early strips still using Burma. And so you can see she's showing up. You mean you really want to play poker with squeers, Miss Burma? With soldiers, Miss Burma? Sure, why not? I don't play poker with dames except in strip poker. Don't pay no attention to that sock grabber. Only manners he learned was before he was expelled from reform school. That's okay, let's make it strip poker. Geez, deal him out, Gook. Get going. Make mine a blush flush. Straight jaw. Jacks are better. Ante a shoe. Later. The foist joik to ask the question gets a busted kissa. So basically, you can tell from this, it's a little bit very much in the vernacular. Milt does this in a lot of his strips, in Terry and the Pirates and Steve Canyon. You know, it's a lot. You might see some of this in other strips like Dick Tracy or some of the other adventure strips at the time. Little Abner obviously had a lot of vernacular, local vernacular, southern or rural dialects, and you see that throughout this. Generally, you know, Milt knows his audience. He knows where they're coming from. He knows, you know, their backgrounds, and he put a lot of research in. And we'll do some nice a couple other strips later on that show some of the military lingo and tips he has for different services and inter-service rivalries, and it's really funny. And what's interesting too, we'll see this a lot more later, is it's distinctly a product of its time. Obviously, you could definitely argue today that Miss Lace, or Burma in this case, is a sex object, and Milt was aware of that, and he was pretty clear in his statement, in his understanding of that. But he also knew that, you know, this was basically the closest thing that most troops out in Europe or the Pacific were going to get to seeing a real girl for, you know, months at a time or longer. And, you know, that comes up in a lot of the strips as well. And there's a lot, and at the same time, you know, a lot of it is kind of inadvertently sexy. She's let's get to one of the strips with actual Miss Lace. So here, we have a similar one to the gambling one from earlier. Saddle Pants, we know what you did to them dice last payday. See, it's exposed in yank. You can't prove nothing. That's not the point. We got a proposition. Listen. Later. Why, yeah, I like to trickle the ivories, General. Let's go. Swell, Miss Lace. It'll add class to the game. Get well for little Nell, Dell. Come out for natural like a nudist, dice. A 4 and a 3 and the beer's on me. 7 lace to heaven, dice. And I 7'd again. Sorry to take all your smokes, gang. That's okay, Miss Lace. I guess we're just lucky. So obviously here, you're getting a lot of contemporary slang, and it's funny because they're playing with the whole loaded dice gag, just like cheating at cards or anything else. And in this case, you know, it worked out. They get to have a little peep show at the same time, so to speak. But you'll see in most of them, Miss Lace is really kind of, she's a character who interacts with the soldiers at a different level. She's not really handled as a sex object so far. or for the most part. She calls all the enlisted soldiers generals, or the sailors admirals. It's pretty funny in that sense. She barely ever hangs out with the officers. You'll see her in a couple strips every now and then. And there's some discussion in some of them why she doesn't ever hang out with the generals and she talks, or the officers, and she talks about how, the enlisted folks just want to, be treated like a real man, or they don't get to, no people at home would salute them if they could, but, it's not how it works. So she, in the story, it's basically she's in some Asian. There's not really a story, so to speak. It's a general setting, which is roughly some Asian post. You maybe think somewhere in China or the southern area, and just some army base nearby. And she just lives in the neighborhood and interacts with a number of these different characters. There's a couple characters that show up recurringly. A couple of the names for different soldiers or enlisted guys, but in general, they're all standalone gags. There's no running story from strip to strip, which was one of Caniff's guidelines when he established the series, so it wouldn't interfere with the ongoing story with Tyrion the Pirates at the time. So let's take a look at a few more of these strips. So here's one. Let's see. Oh yeah. Here's one he did this is one of those military guidelines ones. Good morning, Mr. Gish. Lace, I'd like you to know Lieutenant Gish. How'd you do? Pleasure, Miss Lace. If Mr. Shino doesn't treat you right, just give us men in blue a chance. Hey, who brewed this stew? You two boom boys call each other Mister. You salute him first, although you're a brand new First Louis, and you called him Lieutenant, yet he wore captain's bars. And he had on khaki and talked about us men in blue. What the ding-ding kind of war is this? He's a Navy lieutenant, which is the equivalent of an Army captain. Here, look at this guide one of the boys dreamed up. And so you get this whole breakdown of Army and Marines versus Navy and Coast Guard rank and what some of the different uniform items look like. And it's really, it's a quick header for the guys who, a lot of those junior guys who haven't never worked in a joint environment. Maybe you're about to ship out and you're going to be on a Navy ship and have to deal with amphibious operations or something. So just one of those quick headers, and then you could clip this out of your newspaper and stick it in your wallet if you had to, or the first sergeant might hand out a mimeographed copy of this at formation. Make sure you're not embarrassing the platoon leader or anything like that. So it's one of those nifty things. I do a few of these like this throughout the series. So let's take a look at, this is a pretty funny one. Just another one of these variety ones. The different kinds of military headgear. Uncle Sam Hatter, his variety of issue headgear is exceeded only by the way his G.I. Joe and Josephine have found to wear their chapeau. Pooped droop, China side job, very masky, only seagoing gyrenes with hash to the elbow can do this justice. They never seem to finish the Navy nurse's hat. Army nurses are allowed to wear the new brown peaked cap on street and wax get field cap for post duty. All goes well until a dumb civilian mistakes one branch for the other. Navy dishpan, which we still use. Who wouldn't wear earphones? It gets lonely in there. You can pick up Bob Hope between zeros. That's some funny kind of back and forth as far as the sound-powered headphones you wear and all the radio talking and everything else. Coast Guard immigration restrictor. Those guys always go to the beach at the wrong time of the year. 100 mission crush for the pilots. The Marine gals. Teufelhund with chic. Dr. Livingstone makes every dog face look like he built the Panama Canal. Well, maybe a foxhole. The good old all-purpose M1 bucket. What your mom wouldn't give for a matched set of 6 of these to meet the cooking vessel shortage. No doubt about who got responsibility in the waves and the spars. And remember your civvy hat? So yeah, there's a lot of things like this, but let's get back to some of the actual Lace stories. So here's one where you'll see it's very different sort of thing. This is what the servicemen like to see. This is the kind of appreciation that they were really missing out on. I'm so glad to see you, sport. When you phoned saying you were back, oh, Pete, your arm. I didn't know. Forget it, Lace. I'm not lucky enough to be 6 feet under. Plenty of jobs in the Army don't call for 2 hands. Let's do the hot spots, Keed. My word. I didn't know they were drafting men with only 1 arm. And apparently someone lost their temper, but not who you thought it would be. I didn't see a thing. Did you, Sergeant? Not a thing, officer. This way, sir. So, yeah, she's got a real thing for the men in uniform, and she really sticks up for them on the whole. And it's pretty nifty to see. So, okay, let's jump back to one of the other ones here. This is Peace Conferences. ATWA, yes. That was after the war in 6, so after the war 6 months. Now, keeping in mind, this actually came out in May 1944, but, you know, he's got a bunch of different, he's got an interesting perspective as far as some of the things that you do or don't have to do, that you do or don't have to think about or cover even at this time. This job means long hours and all kinds of weather. Think you can take it? Tunisia, Sicily, Anzio. Yeah, he can probably handle it. No, honey. Sit down. I'll bring your dinner to the table. Then this one is the kind of thing that you might see in with PTSD and some of the OIF type things. A guy hiding under his table. There's only a 315 airliner going over just as the firing sounded. And this is one of those ones that, you know, really kind of gets you teared up a little bit. Daddy, why did you never tell me about Tarawa? That's one of those things that they'd have to deal with, all the Greatest Generation, when they got back. But, yeah, I mean, let's see. Oh, this was another good one. What's this here? Miss Lace dancing with a clinking civilian? I always thought she had some rich 4F on the string. Where else does she get all them clothes? Yeah, and come to think of it, why ain't that Jody in uniform? He looks healthy enough. You said it. They're coming off the floor. Watch me needle him. Hiya, bub. How's things in Essential Indus? Lace? Lace, where are you? Oh, there you are. I got sort of panicky for a minute. Didn't someone say something to me? Yes, General. It's a GI, also back from the Pacific. He wants to shake your hand. So, that was a little embarrassing for Corporal there. Hopefully, he got things worked out there, but, you know, that's Miss Lace's perspective. And a bit more of a Navy thing that I like these. They don't have nearly as many of the Navy as the Army. Why sailors go to sea? Oh, I know how it is. I saw Dickie Danger in Jolly Tars at Savo. Isn't it nice that he's a 4F so he can play in those wonderful movies? Did they name the aircraft carriers after that fella in Dick Tracy? That would be the villain Flat Top. Major Jackson will now tell us how he killed all those nasty old Japs with this darling little PX boat. And that's a play on words because PX is the exchange. PT would be the right term. How could a kid like that get all them ribbons just riding in a boat? That's one service to another. Don't tell me how tough it was in the South Pacific. I've seen those Dorothy Lamour pictures. So, oh yeah. So here's one of those other examples here. Contour map, note magnetic azimuths, and topographic features. So this is one of those, you mean you want a gag too? This isn't enough for you? Now this, oh, okay, another Navy one. This is classy. Navy's ship and aircraft nomenclature is often confusing to landsmen. Since sailors think of their ships as females, this chart will make it simpler to understand some of those groups of letters. DD, aka Destroyer, Dancing Devil, a fast operator. She'll roll you if you don't look lively. PT, party type. She likes to go places and do things. She stays up till the sun goes down. SS, Silent Sender. When you go out with her, she holds you so close you seldom even come up for air. BB, Broad Beam. She's big and tough and a good gal to be with in bandit country. AO, All Out. She'll get dirty with you if you don't fend her off. CV, Charming Vixen. She likes to toss off a few now and then. No matter how often you run out on her, she's always willing to take you back. AR, Always Reliable. She's the motherly sort. Not glamorous, but nice to turn to when you need sympathy. And for landlubbers, Destroyer, Patrol torpedo boat, submarine, battleship, oiler, aircraft carrier, repair ship. It's a fun thing. Let's see. So, I had a couple others picked out, but not sure where they showed up now. But, so yeah, this is the kind of thing where it was the kind of pinup iconography that you'd have just, you know, people would put them up on the wall or anything else. Just clip them and pin them and, you know, a little taste of home for a few minutes a day, or a few minutes a week. A little bit of a break, hopefully, from the foxhole. But, yeah, this is a really fun series. You know, it's worth checking out if you like this kind of historical comic strip. And beautiful artwork, all in black and white, but I'd call it really classy on the whole, but that's just my perspective. I don't, I think as a period of its time, you know, much like Tintin books or, you know, Terry and the Pirates or Dick Tracy or other ones, I mean, there's obviously a few issues that wouldn't fit in with today's culture, but for what it was and who it was aimed at, the target audience, it's a really, really solid piece and worth checking out. So, it was also, you know, it was the kind of thing. These all had to pass the government censors, and most of the newspapers, the camp newspapers, are edited by the chaplains, so there's a lot of discussion in there about, you know, what he could get away with and what he couldn't get away with, what was appropriate, and there were complaints and all kinds of things all the time as well. But he got a lot more fan mail from the troops than complaints from non-military folks. So either way, this is the Hermes Press edition. It just came out a couple years ago, available online or hopefully at your local comic book store. Definitely worth checking out. And if you want the real storylines, again, you dig up the Steve Canyon reprints. There's a couple different versions, or the Terry and the Pirates reprints, and these are all beautiful, very high quality, very definitely worth the price, just a little pricey. And there's also some Steve Canyon TV shows that have been put out on DVD by a fan site, so I'll see if I can dig up the link for that and include it below. But that's it for now. That's just a quick update. Video ran a little longer than I was expecting, but if you want to discuss Milton Caniff anymore, or you know, have any questions, I'll you know, always email me or leave a comment below. Thanks. Lieutenant Fish, out.